Imagine this. You've been working your shift, keeping your cool, following store policy, when out of nowhere, someone decides they're above the rules. They shove past an elderly man, toss their items in front of you, and then, oh, they have the audacity to tell you, life is for the quick ones. Well, by the end of this story, she learned that sometimes life is for the patient ones too. If you've ever been skipped in line, talked down to, or made to feel invisible, you're going to love this one. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle in, because what started as a normal day at work turned into one of the most satisfying moments of my entire retail career. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those quiet stretches in retail where the background music is almost louder than the customers. I was stationed in my usual spot near the impulse buy racks, those candy bars and breath mints that are supposed to lure people into spending an extra couple of bucks. I wasn't the main cashier that day, I was second on call. That meant I didn't just stand at a register waiting. I stalked, straightened, and kept an ear open for that inevitable summons over the intercom. When the first register got too swamped, that was my cue to jump in and open a second lane. It was a system that worked, most of the time. The store had this simple policy for opening a new register. You don't just take the first customer who sprints over to you like it's a Black Friday sale. No, you gesture to the next person in the other line, the one who's been waiting their turn. Fairness. Order. Respect. That's how it was supposed to go. Around 2:45, I heard my name over the intercom. Second register to the front, please. I grabbed my keys, adjusted my apron, and walked over. The first register line was busy, but not chaotic. My eyes scanned for the next in line, and I spotted him immediately, a man who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a vintage photograph. Late 70s, maybe early 80s. White hair neatly combed back, button-up shirt tucked into pressed slack. His hands rested on the handle of his cart, and his groceries were already halfway onto the conveyor belt. Boxes of cereal, milk, a bag of apples, a loaf of bread. Essentials. I caught his eye, gave a polite nod, and gestured toward my newly opened lane. Sir, I can take you over here. He gave me a soft smile and started gathering his items from the belt. It was clear he moved slowly, not out of laziness, but out of the careful patience that comes with age. Every motion was deliberate, and that's when it happened. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement, a sudden burst of energy cutting through the steady pace of the line. A woman, maybe mid-30s, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Perfectly styled hair, oversized sunglasses inside the store, and nails so long I wondered how she even typed on a phone. She didn't wait. She didn't even glance at the older man. She paced around him, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor like a countdown to impact. In a flash, she was at my counter, tossing her items, bags of snacks, a bottle of wine, a few makeup products, onto the conveyor belt with a loud, decisive thud. I froze for half a second. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She knew what she was doing. Ma'am, I said evenly, trying to keep my voice professional, this gentleman was next in line. She didn't hesitate, didn't apologize. In fact, she didn't even look at him. She turned her head toward me just enough to deliver a smirk, the kind that made my stomach tighten. Well, she said, her tone dripping with condescension, life is for the quick ones. The words hung in the air, heavy and smug. I could almost hear the unspoken, and you're too slow to matter. The older man shifted slightly, still holding a box of cereal. His eyes flicked toward mine. There was no anger there, just a faint look of resignation. He lifted a hand and gave a small wave, as if to say, "It's fine, let it go," but it wasn't fine. Not for me. I could already feel the first flicker of irritation warming into something hotter. The kind of heat that sits in your chest and waits. I forced a polite smile, nodded, and began scanning her items. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. This woman had no idea that her little phrase, the one she tossed out so casually, was about to come back to her in a way she wouldn't forget, and I was patient enough to wait for the perfect moment. She stood there at my counter like she owned the place. Not just the store, the whole aisle. Her body language was dripping with entitlement. One hip slightly cocked, sunglasses still on, hands resting lazily on the edge of the conveyor belt as though she were waiting for someone to peel grapes and feed them to her. I scanned the first few items. Beep, 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 the electronic sound oddly loud in the thick, awkward air between us. I could still see the older man out of the corner of my eye, slowly unloading the rest of his groceries back onto the first lane's belt. My coworker at Register 1 gave me a quick glance, the kind that said yikes, sorry you got that one. But the woman? She was completely unfazed. She hummed softly to herself, drumming her manicured nails on the counter in a rhythm that seemed designed to get under someone's skin. I tried to keep my voice neutral. Would you like your wine bagged separately? She didn't even look up. Whatever's quicker, she said. The irony of that statement almost made me laugh, almost. Her performance, while I scanned the rest of her things, she pulled out her phone and began scrolling. Not just a casual glance. Full on, eyes glued to the screen, thumb swiping with mechanical precision. She let out the occasional half-laugh at whatever she was reading, like she wanted me to know she had far more important things to do than engage with the person helping her. Every so often, she would glance up, not at me, but at the line behind her, just to size up who was watching. The unspoken message was loud and clear. I'm in control here. I don't wait for anyone. By this point, my initial irritation had cooled into something sharper, calmer. I wasn't going to raise my voice or make a scene. People like her feed off the drama. They want you to react so they can play the victim. No, she was going to get a different kind of lesson. One she wouldn't see coming. The gentleman, meanwhile, the older man, had made it to the front of the first lane. Our eyes met briefly. There was a softness there, but also a spark, a silent kind of encouragement. Like he understood what I was feeling without me saying a word. It made me want to handle this in a way that would not only satisfy me, but maybe give him a little vindication too. The setup for payback. I finished scanning her last item and told her the total. Without looking up from her phone, she reached into her wallet and pulled out a crisp banknote. I took it, opened the register, and began counting her change. That's when she looked up, really looked up for the first time since she cut the line. Oh wait, she said suddenly, snapping her fingers as if she just remembered something. I might have exact change, so I don't get all that back. And with that, she began rummaging in her purse. Not a quick glance, not a purposeful dig. No, she took her time. Her perfectly polished nails flicked past receipts, makeup compacts, and crumpled bills. I swear she even stopped to check a notification on her phone mid-search. The irony was almost painful. The woman who had shoved her way to the front of the line in the name of quickness was now single-handedly slowing everything down for everyone behind her, and that's when I felt it, that moment where annoyance crystallizes into opportunity. I still had her full change in my hand, the weight of the coins and bills pressing into my palm. I glanced up at her. She was still digging, oblivious. And in my head, a single thought formed, crisp and satisfying. Life is for the quick ones, huh? Let's test that theory. By the time she finally looked up again, the trap was set. She had no idea the words she'd thrown at me minutes earlier were about to come back at her, word for word. Her head popped up from her purse like a meerkat suddenly aware of its surroundings. Oh, okay, I think I found it, she said, holding a few coins in her palm. Just give me a sec, I can match the amount so I don't get all that change back. I didn't move, didn't reach for the coins, didn't even open my hand, because in that moment I knew exactly how this was going to play out. The moment before I could see her impatience starting to boil again, the faint twitch in her jaw, the way her eyes narrowed ever so slightly when I didn't immediately leap into action. The line behind her had gone quiet. No one said anything, but I could feel the eyes on us. It was the same energy you get when you see someone about to get what's coming to them. You don't interrupt, you just wait. The older man, still in the other lane, was clearly paying attention now. He wasn't smiling yet, but there was this readiness about him, like he knew a good show was about to start. Delivering the line, I looked down at the change in my hand, cool metal coins, crisp bills, then looked back up at her. And I let a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. Without a single word, I placed the change down on the counter. Not a slam, not a toss. Just a firm, satisfying smack that made the coins clink against the hard surface. Her eyes flicked from the money to me, confusion flashing for the briefest moment. And then I said it. Well, life is for the quick ones. I made sure my tone was light, almost cheerful. And I smiled, a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. The kind of smile that says, I know exactly what I just did, and so do you. The shock for a split second, she didn't react. It was like her brain needed time to process that I'd just thrown her own words back at her in front of an entire line of strangers. Then, her face shifted. The smug confidence she'd worn earlier melted into something else. Tight-lipped irritation, the faint flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck. She scooped up the change in a quick, jerky motion, stuffed it into her purse, and muttered something under her breath that I couldn't quite catch. But the tone? Oh, I caught that. Sharp, clipped, defensive. The exit without another word, she turned on her heel, grabbed her bag, and walked out. Her strides were just a bit too quick, her shoulders stiff, like she was trying to leave before anyone could register that she'd just been publicly served a slice of humble pie. The wine bottle in her bag clinked as she went, a little soundtrack to her retreat. The applause that wasn't the store didn't erupt into cheers. That's not how real life worked. But there was something better, a subtle, silent acknowledgement. The man in the other lane finally smiled. Not a small smile. No, this was a full, satisfied grin, slow and deliberate, like he was savoring every second. And then the thumbs up. The kind that said, "You did good, kid." A couple of people in my lane gave small nods, little knowing looks. No one had to say it out loud, but the collective energy was pure. That was perfect. The internal release inside, I felt the tension in my chest loosen. Not in a loud, victorious way, but in that deeply satisfying way where you know you handled something just right. I hadn't broken policy. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even been outright rude. I'd simply returned her words to her, polished, gift-wrapped, and served with a smile. And judging by the way she stormed out, it landed exactly the way I wanted it to. By the time I turned back to my register, the next customer was already stepping up, a faint grin still on their face. The store went back to its usual rhythm, but for me, that moment would linger. A small, perfect victory in the middle of an otherwise ordinary day. The moment itself was over in less than a minute, but its echo, that lasted. As I rang up the next customer, my mind replayed the scene like a favorite movie clip. The way her eyes widened when she heard her own words thrown back at her. The stiff turn of her shoulders as she stormed away. The almost imperceptible pause in the line as everyone silently acknowledged what had just happened. It was the kind of scene you wish you could bottle and keep forever, so you could pull it out on bad days and remind yourself, yes, sometimes the universe does let you have the last word. The gentleman's look out of the corner of my eye, I saw the older man finishing up at the other register. He didn't rush. He moved with the same unhurried grace he had before. But when he passed by my lane on his way out, he slowed just enough to make eye contact. That smile again. Warm, knowing, almost conspiratorial. And then, one more time, that slow, deliberate thumbs up. It wasn't exaggerated. It didn't need to be. It said everything. It said, I saw that. I appreciated that. And I'm glad someone still believes in fairness. That, more than anything, made the whole exchange worth it. It wasn't just about shutting down an entitled customer. It was about quietly standing up for the people who play by the rules, the ones who often get steamrolled because they don't want to cause trouble. The shift in the air. The customers who came through my lane for the next 15 minutes seemed lighter, friendlier. A few smiled, a few gave subtle nods. One woman, maybe in her late 40s, handed me her card and said quietly, that was well done. It wasn't loud praise, but it didn't need to be. It was solidarity, the quiet, shared understanding that someone had crossed a line, and someone else had gently but firmly pushed them back. I realized something then. In retail, you learn to let a lot of things slide. You swallow a lot of pride. You bite your tongue more often than not. But every once in a while, you get a moment where the stars align and you get to balance the scales. And when you do it without losing your professionalism, that's not just a win. That's art. Why it felt different. This wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. I wasn't trying to humiliate her just to feel powerful. No, this was about precision. About letting her feel, for just a few seconds, the sting she'd inflicted on someone else. When she'd brushed past that older man, she hadn't just taken his place in line. She'd taken his dignity. She'd sent him the message that his time, his patience, his place didn't matter. I wasn't okay with that. By giving her back her own words, I wasn't just making a point to her. I was sending a quiet message to everyone watching. Kindness is not weakness. And respect is not optional. The lingering satisfaction as my shift went on, the hum of the store returned to normal. The beeping scanners, the muted conversations, the distant hum of the refrigerators in the back. But I carried that satisfaction with me like a small, glowing ember. It wasn't loud or boastful. It was private, almost meditative. I knew she'd probably go home and tell someone about the rude cashier who embarrassed her. But deep down, she'd remember the moment someone looked her in the eye, smiled, and reminded her that she wasn't untouchable. That her little mantra about life being for the quick ones had a flip side. And I like to think maybe, just maybe, the next time she saw someone waiting patiently in line, she'd think twice before shoving past them. By the time my break rolled around, I'd already decided something. That day wasn't just a story I'd tell coworkers in the break room. It was one I'd keep for years, because it wasn't just a good customer service comeback. It was a moment that reminded me, and maybe a few others, that quiet justice is still justice. My break that day was unusually peaceful. I sat in the staff room, sipping lukewarm coffee from the vending machine, and thought about what had just happened. It wasn't a grand act of heroism. I hadn't stopped a robbery or saved someone's life. But I had done something smaller, something quieter, that still mattered. I had reminded someone, even if just for a moment, that other people exist, that their time matters, that they aren't invisible. The power of a sentence. It's funny, isn't it? How just a few words can hold so much weight. She'd tossed out, life is for the quick ones, like it was a badge of honor, a justification for being selfish. But when I handed that sentence back to her, gently but firmly, it wasn't just petty payback. It was a mirror. She had to hear her own voice reflected back at her, and she didn't like the way it sounded. That's the thing about people who bulldoze their way through life. They rarely stop to think about the mess they leave behind. They only realize it when someone quietly points it out. And sometimes, pointing it out doesn't take shouting. Sometimes, all it takes is a smile. Retail realities. Working in retail teaches you two things very quickly. People's true personalities come out when they're under minor stress. You can't control them, but you can control how you respond. I've dealt with all kinds of customers. The ones who yell because their coupon expired last year, the ones who try to haggle over fixed prices, the ones who treat you like furniture until they need something. You learn to let most of it slide. But when you find that rare moment where you can hold someone accountable without crossing the line yourself, it feels like a perfect balancing act. Why it mattered. This wasn't about me needing to win. It was about standing up, subtly, for fairness. That older man might have walked away without saying anything, but I knew he felt the sting when she cut in front of him. And maybe he was used to letting things go. Maybe he'd seen enough of the world to know it wasn't worth the fight. But I also knew that seeing me respond, even in a small way, gave him a flicker of satisfaction. That thumbs up he gave me, that was him saying, "You didn't have to do that, but I'm glad you did." And maybe it even made a few other customers in line think about how they treat people when no one's watching. The long game of karma. Do I think she changed overnight? Probably not. People like that usually don't. But maybe, somewhere deep down, she'll hesitate next time before shoving past someone. Maybe she'll remember the sting of hearing her own arrogance turned against her. And if she doesn't? Well, karma has a long memory. I'm confident the world will hand her more mirrors to look into. The lesson I took away that day reminded me that revenge doesn't always have to be big, loud, or cruel. Sometimes, it's just about restoring balance in the smallest way possible. About giving someone exactly what they gave you, no more and no less. It's a reminder that politeness is not weakness. That you can be professional, calm, and still deliver a lesson that lands. And most importantly, it's proof that even in the middle of a fluorescent-lit Tuesday afternoon, surrounded by candy bars and conveyor belts, you can still have a moment that makes you walk a little taller. Closing thought. As I clocked out that night, I walked past the empty registers, the quiet aisles, the neatly lined shelves. Nothing looked different, but I knew my day had been. Because sometimes, the victories you remember the most aren't the ones that come with applause or recognition. They're the small, quiet ones that happen in the middle of ordinary life, in the moments when no one expects you to act, but you do. And that day, in that store, with one sentence and a smile, I won.